Good morning, indie authors. Welcome back to Sid Mickle Publications. The title of today's video is Avoid My Self-Publishing Mistakes. I have self-published 7 books. We're going to take a look at 4 of those books, and I'm going to point out some mistakes that I made with each one of them and give you some tips on avoiding those mistakes. I want to try to save you some anxiety and some frustration, and maybe make you just a little bit more efficient as you write your first or your 20th book. Let's get started with book 1 in our review of mistakes. In book 1, A Backwards Glance, the major mistake I made here was rushing the completion of this book. I'm a new author. I wanted my name on a published work. I got a little bit ahead of myself as I got to the end of this book. I had already removed 4 chapters from a 414-page book. I did not take the amount of time I should to finish this story. The other mistake I made was a very critical one. I self-edited this book. I used the Read Aloud app on my laptop. I used ProWriting Aid, and they're both great. They both help, but they are not a professional editor. And my book, my very first book that I really enjoy very much, suffered from that mistake. Now, there are 2 things that I did learn from that, 2 positive things. I learned that I have the discipline to sit down and write a book, complete a book, and to work on it and to polish it and to try my best to make it the best book I can write. I also learned how to develop my own writing discipline, the structure of writing, the time it takes to write the book. And I was able to use that discipline to really stay committed and finish this book once I really got serious and decided to complete book 1. Book 2, Who Killed Glenna? I wrote this book in 4 months, try to get the glare off of there. It was one of those things that I was very confident going into. I had written my first book. I had a great deal of energy, and I felt like I was ready to write this book. I had the story in my mind. The biggest mistake I made in this book was I didn't develop or fully develop the ending of the book. I did not take this really good story and spend the right amount of time to make this ending really pull out the characters and really tell that story, or close out that story as well as it could have been done. I also did not develop several characters as well as I should have, primary and secondary characters. I could have done an awful lot more in developing those characters and making this a better story. But the good things I did there, I learned that a book can be written in segments. I didn't look at it as one giant project. I decided to write it in segments. I did my outline, I did my opening, and I spent the right amount of time, I believe, on both of those things. Then I worked on the body of the book and other things as I went through it. I was able to use my writing discipline to better edit this book, to get it established. I wrote without fail. Now, I did not write whenever I didn't feel like writing because I felt like that would just produce bad work. But when I did write, I wrote in earnest, and I really enjoyed the time I spent on this book. The other thing I learned as I got to the end of the book and began my own self-edit, you can edit a bad page. You can change it, you can make it good, but you can't do anything with a blank page. You have to have that discipline to sit your butt in a chair and write. Those are the 2 things I learned the most about Who Killed Glenna. The next book I want to talk about is probably book 4 in the overall writing of the 7 books, and it is called If I Could Turn Back Time. The thing that I made a mistake here is I wrote about a character who had major flaws. He had real problems, and he didn't treat people extremely well. He made tremendous mistakes. What I failed to do is really develop that aspect of the story to its full potential. In other words, I did write about the mistakes he made. I did write that he regretted them and that he wanted to make amends, but I could have done so much more in fully explaining that and bringing more out. I could have written a lot more about the suffering and maybe the things that he wanted to do to make things better. Now, the good things that I did in this book, I again wrote in segments. I did not write this book linear at all. When a scene came to my mind, I wrote it. I didn't worry that I was ahead of myself. I didn't worry I was writing the middle or the end of the book as I was just getting started. And I think the benefit to that is this. When that story comes to your mind, or that piece of the story comes to your mind, write it. It'll be probably the most dynamic, the most energetic you're going to be when you're writing that part of the story. Because if you put it off, you might not get back that same energy, that same burst of creativity. I learned how to write out of sequence. And that's tough for someone like me because I'm just an OCD person. I want everything to be in line and be perfect and be ordered. That's not the way I can write my best. So I really did a good job of changing that. The other thing I did was I got a pro cover. I had professional editing, and I spent the right amount of time developing my social media following. I had great readers. I got tremendous input. I got tips from some of my readers that really changed some of the characters and some of the things that happened to them. So there were a couple of really good things and a couple of things I didn't do very well in there. The final book I want to talk to you about today is my most recent publication, and it is Kill 'Em All. It's the second book in a 3-book set that began with Who Killed Glenna. This book is by far my best writing to date. I made great strides in my writing style and my writing discipline. In other words, I just wrote the best books so far. What I did wrong was I made 2 really critical mistakes, and they were unforced errors. In the download process, or as I published the book on Amazon KDP, I had a page out of sequence early on in the book. Just a terrible mistake, and we published it. Now, we found this error right away and corrected it, and I don't think it had too much of an impact at all because it was just very early in the process. But it was so demoralizing. It was so frustrating, and it really made me angry that I would miss that I would not catch that kind of mistake. The second thing I did was I paid for a professional cover. It was not a very good cover, but I didn't trust my own instincts on that cover. I went with it. And after about a month, we realized this cover is just not right for this book. And we did an awful lot of testing. We went out and we asked people, and we really drilled down into what was wrong. Then we went out and got our second cover, professional cover, that we think is really good and has certainly helped the book's momentum. Those are 2 unforced errors. I did this after publishing 6 other books. So you have to be on guard. You have to be exacting when you go through the technical part of uploading your book. Now, a couple of good things. The thing that helped me the most was knowing that my writing was much improved. It helped my editing and rewrite process go smoother. My own editor actually said to me, "This is the easiest book I've edited for you. Your writing is much improved." That's a tremendous boost of confidence and gives you great energy when you hear that from someone who loves to take the red pen and mark through your work. The other thing that I did was I was able to write some emotions in this book and write them really deeply. I wrote sentimentality. I wrote some nostalgic scenes. I wrote great anxiety. And I wrote an awful lot of self-anger and self-suffering in multiple characters in this book. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. I realized I could do that. And I couldn't do it until this book because I didn't have the writing experience. So the lesson I learned was the more I write, the better writing I do. I hope these tips have been helpful. I lay these things out because I have made these mistakes. I know they can be very frustrating. Hopefully the things we've talked about today will help you avoid those mistakes and save yourself some frustration and some anxiety about writing your book. My last piece of advice is this: no matter what, if you want to write your book, sit down and write. Remember that conversation we had about you can't edit a blank page? That's really true. You have to attack this book and you have to really want to carve out the time to write it. The other thing is, understand, this is a huge project. This is a very big undertaking. Never give up credit to yourself for undertaking this task. It's big. Don't give that up. You are doing something a lot of people don't have the ability, the time, or maybe just the guts to do. Always hold on to that. And understand one more thing. If I can publish a single book or 7 books or 30 books, you can certainly publish a book as well. So until we get together again next week, I hope all of you have a great remainder of the week. Take care of yourself. Go out and have some fun with your friends or your family. It'll be the best part of your week. But until we get together again, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.